yesterday, so my focus is a little bit distracted. That happens a lot when you're a lived experience speaker, but it's also just because I'm human. So the PowerPoint's all prepared, it's all edited. It's actually a slightly different lecture. This is actually a brand new lecture. It's a mixture of some other ones that I usually give. So it's my first run on this one, so yeah, I hope you enjoy it. I'm Phoebe. This is all the stuff I do. Not here to talk about that, but I'm involved on all levels, from sort of grassroots to middle and upper executive and NGOs and things. So today I'm just going to be presenting a bit of my own story. So I'm going to do like simple storytelling, but then also throwing in a few other concepts and things which I think make it more interesting, and some of them are quite challenging for, I often find, people to hear, because they are alternative perspectives. It's not my job to convince anyone of my views, but it's always great to park it in the room when you're tutoring or lecturing, because it's just good to open dialogue and open up a thought box, you know. So I do give some kind of quite academic-y sort of lectures on critical perspectives, but this is a little bit of both. I officially took unwell in about 2007, probably in the second half of the year, and wasn't diagnosed until the following year in 2008. So I was first of all diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and then in the following year, 2008, that was changed to schizoaffective disorder. And my story is basically about the phases of shock, denial, confusion, uncertainty, acceptance of dominant frameworks, lack of insight, basic education, loss of hope, loss of identity, self-discovery, and then finally more deeper sort of self-education and self-discovery, and yeah, all the way up until I think where I've moved more into self-mastery over myself and my life. And so what is my story? I grew up in southeast England with a very supportive family, very loving, had all my needs met as a child, and in many ways had a very privileged childhood, and I really couldn't have asked for anything more. Was a bright, self-confident, well-articulated and talented child who did well at school and in performing arts. I had solid friendships and content with my life up until around about the age of 14, 15 is where things sort of started to go awry. And that's when I took a nasty turn and sort of prematurely entered quite an adult and scary world. But previous to that, I'd done everything that I sort of wanted to do. Everything was pretty normal and conventional. I was me at a dance class and dance school. Unfortunately, when I had turned 14, I'd been invited to quite an adult party. I think people a lot older than me. And unfortunately, I was raped by a man that I didn't know, and I know you'll know it's very common that it usually happens with someone you know. And at 14, you just don't really have the level of maturity to really, you know, understand that. But that feeling of being violated in that way is enormously difficult for anyone. So I was much the same as many women, but I think being younger was probably even more, you know, confusing. I wouldn't really have known at the time, but clearly I had post-traumatic stress disorder, and I was very, very much adversely affected in a lot of ways. My focus and concentration went, I had the nightmares, the night terrors, the butterflies in your stomach, that hypervigilance around men, and then the distrust, kind of problems having, what's a normal relationship, but you know, with boys and men as I grew up over the few years. I think on some levels I was quite subdued, on other levels I overcompensated and was very gregarious and loud and trying to build my confidence by maybe being overconfident, and so I would have presented in lots of different ways, and so it was confusing to me and everyone around me. I didn't tell my parents, didn't tell a school teacher, didn't tell anyone. I told a few close friends. but your friends at that age probably don't have the psychological skills really to help you through that either. So it was an enormously difficult time. And following that, I was then in a relationship actually with a con artist who took some of my inheritance, and that was all. He ended up being, I don't know what the English level, it would be like your level of federal police, or it would probably be New Scotland Yard, was after this guy was into a lot of things, was got mixed up in a little bit of that. And with the PTSD, I got that violent, I became violent myself, and hung around with probably not the best people. Eventually got thrown out of school for beating somebody up, quite badly. I beat this girl, was eventually let back to school later, but it was a process. So, and just throw in the usual, teenagers are just generally a mess anyway, aren't we, with like our hormones and everything. And my grandparents had died. I'd also had a rare spinal deformity diagnosed, and so I was later put in a back brace for 7 hours a day for 9 months. And so, and being a dancer, crushed my dreams of ballerina or what genre I was going to go into. So it was just all a bit of a mess. So eventually my mother emigrated here to Perth in 2000 with my stepfather, and she actually took on well with a psychiatric condition as well, and she had a lot of disassociation and massive trauma background, and so I came out to live with her here in 2002. I arrived, brought my husband with me, who was then my fiance, but we married, and we've been together 20 years over. And I was thinking, wow, I'm leaving my dad, all my friends, all my supports, my in-laws, and going to somewhere. I'd been here once for a holiday to check it out, but and I guess I thought I'd just fly to the other side of the world and just leave all the problems behind. I'd just get here and suddenly I'd just be a new me, because I was actually only about 23 when we emigrated, so still pretty young, and I just thought I could start afresh. And this little picture's just kind of to show that I miss my dad. I was my daddy's girl. So life turned out to actually be more stressful here than in the UK, because emigration is really stressful. And when you come and you're then a carer for your mother who's in and out of hospitals, we had overdoses. I heard things that I just wish I'd never heard, and I can't unhear, about what happened to her when she was in a state. Things come out, and it's just so many issues. And in fact, to be honest, out of all my life experience, and even though my own journey has been quite horrific, I would actually place my role as a carer as the most traumatic thing that has happened to me, because when you're caring for somebody else, as you can see, I well up, because even now, my mum's fine, she's great, it's been years, I just carry how awful the experience of being a carer was. So I'm very sympathetic to carers. But all this stress of coming here and not having anyone to talk to, the job I had in the UK in the medical field, I was an assistant in an operating theatre, but I wasn't a nurse, and the job doesn't exist here. The training I had doesn't equate, couldn't find a job, husband couldn't find a job. We had to swap visas, get him on a visa, get my mum well. I was organising the wedding at the same time on my own. So yeah, very, very stressful. So yeah. Basically, I finally did, when we all settled and mum levelled out of it, my husband was working and we got all the visas, we calmed down a bit, and I got a job again in the medical field, because I'd always loved medicine and the human body and mental health. I was kind of into that. So I grew out of all my pop star dreams, because I'd actually been in operatic training since I was 12. In England, I was trying to make it in the music industry. So I eventually just got over that and focused on this interest in the human body and medicine. And I worked in a radiology clinic doing all sorts of things. And one day, one of the doctors said, you're really bright, and I just think you're wasted here. You should just be a doctor. And I went, oh, okay, I'll just do that then. I just quit my job and went to college. It was just very impulsive, and I just thought, well, I'm not doing anything else any better, so I'll be a doctor. And I thought, yeah, I never thought maybe that I was really able to do it, but it seemed like I was encouraged to try, and it seemed weird, and I thought, well, I'll just try and be a doctor, and off I went, and I did very well academically. I spent 2 years at Chewett College. My husband came to college with me too, and he did a few things just out of interest. So we did everything together. And I ended up winning a National Adult Learners Award, a Humanities Triple Award, and the College Valedictorian Award. And my tertiary entrance rank, because it was TEE back then, was in the 97th percentile for the state. So I had a really good application for medical school at UWA. And I went and sat the entrance exam, as it was back then, the indomitable UMAT exam. Now, unbeknownst to me, I was actually not very well at this point, and I still refer to it as mania. I'm not very aligned with a lot of sort of clinical terms these days because I've gone the other way, but I think mania describes it really well. I was maniac, basically. I was getting up at, I think it was 4:15 every morning, going to some sites. One was UW architecture and one was dentistry. 2 hours of cleaning in the morning till, I think it was till 7, dash back home, quick wash, get changed, get to college. I was full-time college till 5, I'd then stay in the library till 9, put in extra work, come home, have dinner, 1 more hours of reading, go to bed, get up. Now I did that for 18 months, plus studying all day Saturday, all day Sunday, and drinking in the evenings, and I had boundless energy. I ran for an hour and a half a day on a treadmill. I did 1,500 stomach crunches a day. And it just had boundless energy, and I just thought, wow, I'm super productive. Like, I'm an overachiever, this is great, this is all easy. No, well, it's not easy, but I'm doing it. And then in 2007, I deliberately took a gap year before I applied medicine, my final application, because I was doing a computer course that prepares you specifically for UMAT style questions. So I was actually working full-time and exercising and studying all through 2007 as well. So it had been basically 3 years been preparing to get into medical school. And when I sat the UMAT, I was probably very manic. And my results came through in the September 2007. This was just kind of a picture that really appealed to me because that was me in college. It was like, oh my God. But I did it, and the weight kept dropping. So I actually dropped down to about 39 kilos. That's me at 42 kilos the year before or after. So it was really getting, it was thinner than that. So it was really quite evident outwardly that I was losing a lot of weight, but everyone's just like, I'm just over-exercising. But a lot of that I think was the mania, because I just had so much energy, and when you're manic, obviously you're not hungry, so I didn't really have the appetite. But I guess people around you don't always, I didn't notice, so so my real afterwards, my results came through and I failed. I failed the third section, which is a lot of picture puzzles, and of course I see very different things to what some people see due to my mind. And so I didn't get the panel interview, which I thought I was quite confident in doing. And so essentially, to say I was a bit disappointed was an understatement. I mean, it had been 3 years of work, study, preparation, even attaining, awards and having a great application, and I still failed at the penultimate hurdle. And so I started to question that even after doing all that and all that attainment and all that achievement, whether I could actually ever do any better, and why I wasn't good enough. And I really struggled with this don't take failure very well, because I've actually never failed at anything before. And so that was a shock, and then I just couldn't cope with the associated feelings. So I had a couple of week period where I just went into a sort of a daze. And my experience was the only way I can describe it is I felt like I was floating through life. Like, it's when I drove somewhere or said something or did something, I couldn't remember doing it. Was that me? I was hearing noises that I couldn't be sure were actually there, but I didn't know. I felt very disorientated. I isolated I wasn't talking to my friends, wasn't sleeping, I wasn't eating again. My arms and my hands didn't feel like my own sometimes, and that's a very, common symptom associated with schizophrenia, you know, this robot. It was just excruciating. And then I had a big row with my mum because I've just got this temper as well, and isolated myself from her, so that was very sad, and we were all living together at that point, so bad atmosphere. And then ultimately, one night, probably a few weeks later, I had a really big row with my husband, to the point where I then threatened to stab him with a knife, and then just decided to kill myself, and drove off into the night, and just thought I just can't go on like this. So luckily, obviously, I did not complete suicide. I managed to get myself home, and my husband took me to a GP the next day. And then that weekend I was admitted to a private clinic. Unfortunately though, when I got there, I was so confused and so angry because I didn't know why I'd been put in this. I just was so confused that I ended up being very aggressive and quite violent there, and then found myself in Greylands. Luckily, I only got trapped in Greylands for a week because I got put on a priority transfer list to another private facility. There was a problem with my health insurance, it didn't come through, but this particular clinic has 2 government subsidised beds, so it's a private clinic, very small, with 2 public beds, and I got one, so that was great. And found myself stuck there for 7 weeks, and you know, it had been a little over a week in that process of going to the GP, where I'd been to about 3 different facilities. I'd seen a GP, been to 3 different places, seen 5 psychiatrists, and no one could tell me what was wrong with me. And none of my friends or family, everyone was completely confused. It's like, I was thinking, hang on, I just had this wonderful marriage, I'm a high school sweetheart, 20 years, I finally went to Australia with my mum's got well, I've been to college, I've achieved all this stuff, I've got great friends, I was popular at college, I finally made friends in the country that I immigrated to, like, I'm going to be a doctor. And now I'm just doped up and a bit drooly and staggering around a psych clinic out of my, completely confused. And I think at one point I was actually in a room sitting in front of the desk, the psychiatrist and me, and I just said, I think I'm on the wrong side of the desk. I was gonna be a doctor. Because ironically at that point my interest was psychiatry, so it was just, yeah, it was pretty bad. And I think then just followed this phase of shock for 5 or 6 months where I just didn't do anything really, I just was in shock. And then followed that phase, sort of, I had this denial, I was like, this just doesn't happen to me, it's just people like me, just have breakdowns, I don't know what's wrong with me. And I got myself eventually, after about 19 months being on a sickness allowance, I got a little job in a sandwich bar, and it was all going okay, but I think by getting a job in a sandwich bar, I was sort of feeding my own denial, because I was thinking, you know, if I can work, there's just nothing wrong with me. Plodded along there for 5 months, but then unfortunately took a lot of extra shifts to cover somebody's leave, which I probably shouldn't have done in my first job in nearly 2 years. And I think maybe that just pressure at work, just general kind of life pressure, was a bit much. And then I had a terrible episode where I guess it's what would be termed clinically termed a floridly psychotic, paranoid and delusional episode. It was sort of in that realm. So I thought the Department of Immigration had armed rogue agents out after me, wanting to find me and shoot me. So they were armed and they would just shoot me, and I was going to be dead. And I just don't know where that came from, but that's where my mind went. And so I went missing from home for a couple of days, thinking I just can't be at home, they're going to find me, they're going to kill me. I also don't want to be at home because my husband's there and they'll kill him. So I was really thinking even more about him and being protective of my family and loved ones. So I turned my mobile phone off, just because I thought that was being tracked as well. And then one day I walked out of, because on the second day I was missing, I walked out of a Kmart store, I think it was, and I saw those panels, you know, that pick up the security tags, those panels, and I thought that they were picking up signals from deep within my hair, in my scalp, and beaming them up to a satellite, and back down to the Department of Immigration, telling them where I was located. And being located meant I get shot, right? So, I'm panicking now, and I ran into a hair salon and had them shave my head. Like, well, I don't mean like a cut, I mean shave to the scalp, like grade 0 or grade 1. And I thought that would solve the hair problem, and then I'd look different and no one would find me. Now this is the first point in this few years of my journey, this is about 2009, nearly the end of 2009, that I'd heard voices. So even though I had a schizoaffective diagnosis, and as we know, auditory hallucinations are the most common, hearing voices, I never had that. I see things when I'm psychotic, but I was hearing voices, and I had one voice saying, it was really scary, because he's saying, basically telling me where to run, when to hide, how fast to go, and they're coming, they're going to be around the next corner, you're going to die, run here, go in here. And that's just exclusion on its own. But then another voice, which is like a running commentary on everything I'm doing. So I was hearing this, she is walking very fast, she's going into a shop, she's picking her nose, she's having a cigarette, and it's just at once. And I just never experienced that. And with no real education on my illness, it was just horrific. Anyway, my husband did find me at a beach. On the second or third day, I'd gone to the beach where he actually proposed to me on our holiday out here years before, so it was a place for me. So that's where he found me, and then back into the psychiatric clinic, bit of a emergency admission, and then I just find myself having to enter an acceptance phase. And at this point, I've only been shown by medical model disease, non-biological psychiatry. It's all this chemical imbalance stuff, and it's just schizoaffective, it's in your brain, and I'm just, okay. There was no option for me to understand myself in a different way. There was no alternatives. It's just the westernized, dominant psychiatry framework, and that's all I had. And for a lot of people, it doesn't make sense. But I've just swallowed, and I think, I just have to accept. But at the same time, I don't look like me now. I don't feel like me inside. When you're bald, you don't look, for a woman, you can imagine it strips away everything. And so, that was the slide from the previous thing. So, in this crisis, I don't feel like me. I look in the mirror and I visually don't look like me. So I'm not integrated in any way at all. And that was me just, I've got makeup on in that picture, but there just wasn't any sense of, I just didn't know who I was. And, it was really, really enormously difficult. And I often ask people in lectures at some certain points in my story, put your hands up if you've ever lost anything really expensive or really valuable, and people thinking, I lost my watch, I lost my wallet. Well, I lost my identity. Firstly, mainly in this physical sense, I think was a shocker. I had a little bit of experience in not feeling like myself before, but this was really hard. So look, I just accepted this framework of understanding, and basically then followed this phase of lack of insight. I'm not particularly keen on the term insight. I've done some tutoring at Curtin, and we talk about this, just because the first person doesn't agree with the second person, a clinician or whoever, that they don't understand themselves, just because they don't agree, it doesn't mean it's that first person who lacks insight. And it's actually a subjective thing, and it's one of those philosophical things you've got to really unpack. But could there be such a thing as outside? And if there was a word called outside, what would that mean? Sort of unpacking the stuff. So I just went through this not knowing anything. And it'd been a few years, I hadn't even typed in schizoaffective disorder to Google. I hadn't even done a doctor Google, so I really then found myself I was having to think, I need to try and understand what people are telling me, and I really should start to try and prepare and plan and have some self-management. I need to learn how to cope now, so it would have taken a while to get me to this point. And I had this niggling thing in the back of my mind, it's like, am I actually medically, clinically sick? Or is there another way of looking at this, and is it a fact, and I knew I wanted an education on it, but most people, especially service users, don't have access to the level of education and, journal articles, medical, library access at uni, and even our professionals and psychiatrists, unless they're being taught by a critical psychiatrist who teaches them to look outside of their, what they do in a job. Pat Bracken is great at this. He teaches psychiatrists. Your model actually isn't evidence. There's no evidence, so just be aware that people are going to have other views, and they're very legitimate and valid views. It's just all wonderful teaching stuff. But I had this niggling thing, but I didn't know where to get the education. So I stuck with this biomedical stuff, thinking, okay, at least I'll just, I'll do some work on anxiety, and I'll do mindfulness, and I'll do, So I was into all that, and reading self-help books, spent about, a couple of months just digging in and trying to just prepare myself, and I just like that because it goes with the colour of my PowerPoint. That's not my home office, by the way. And so look, that was great fun. And then the next phase, was just this loss of hope, because after reading all the stuff about people like me, I was like, wow, I really don't have much to look. I'm not really going to achieve anything. I'm not, my future, how am I going to have a future if I'm just going to end up on a disability and I'm not going to be able to work 40 hours a week, and I'm not, how am I mean, it's pretty bleak. You can't help but feel like, wow, my life is fucked now. There's no, I'm just not like other people. I've just got so many more challenges, and I don't know how I'm going to do the rest of my life like this. I've only been doing this bit for 4 years and 3 years, and I'm already exhausted, right? So it was pretty hard. But then I think I got to the point where I started getting a little bit involved in mental health, and I did some basic lived experience speaking for a couple of little NGOs, and all voluntary, and then I got a consumer representative job on a local consumer advisory group, started learning a little bit of micro-systemic stuff, governance and policies, and that was interesting. And I didn't really get my first actual salary paid job in mental health till March 2015. So my bread and butter job is in peer support, and I have a big piece of my heart in peer support and helping other people with these shared experiences. So I kind of started building, but I had before I was able to actually even start that, I put myself through ECT. And when you end up accepting to have 3 weeks worth of ECT consistently, it's sad that you get to that point where you do that because you feel you've got no option, and you've gone beyond depression into despair. Because despair is like a whole other, depression is awful on all levels, and that's what actually kills people. It's not BPD, and it's not these things aren't things, it's depression is what kills people. So it's the most fatal, worst mental illness. But there's a level of depression which I call despair, and for me despair is when I just can't put into words, and I think very few people, sort of regular people that you meet, have ever experienced the feeling of despair. It's intolerable. When you're despairing of life and you actually think, I'll just be dead, it's really intolerable. I had ECT, and for whatever reason, it worked phenomenally well on me, phenomenally well. I had an exponential sort of recovery. I don't know what that science is. I'm not really aligned with chemical imbalance theories and all that stuff. I don't know enough about ECT. I'm thinking that just because I came off of the mood stabilizers to have ECT, because mood stabilizers are essentially anticonvulsants, and you can't have them in ECT. Maybe that's what lifted the mood. I don't know, and I don't care, but it worked, and I felt hope. So I started piecing myself together, essentially, from probably just the end of November 2011 is when I finished ECC and started recovering. And then, as I said, that got me to the point where I did a little bit of consumer rep work for the consumer advisory group, and a little bit of lived experience storytelling for some small organisations, and eventually ended up in peer support. And so that is kind of the bulk of my story, and I really wanted to move on because I've got lots of I've been given questions by a lecturer before years ago to lecture on, and they were such useful questions that I often replicate them because they're really, really handy. And so, I was going to preface it with just a general, very quick 2-minute preamble on recovery, because there's sort of all these different views. So we've got clinical recovery, social recovery, and personal recovery. And clinical recovery has probably never been more so under fire than now, and not just from people, activists in the consumer movement, but even from some clinicians. It's not their favourite thing. The biomedical model, we medicalise people's problems, and we, pathologise their personal experiences down to a disorder and put them in a box. I'm normal, you're not like me, therefore you're abnormal, you must be sick. And that's what our services offer, and that's the understanding. And we just aim at, often in pure biological psychiatry clinical recovery, we just medicate, and we aim to eradicate symptoms with medication, thinking if you're not experiencing symptoms, then you must be recovered. And that's kind of that's how it started, So biological psychiatry is, very highly criticised by the consumer academics, where people have gone and done these degrees who are also people of lived experience, and they can actually academically criticise it and produce their own papers and theses, and that's a lot of stuff that I've had access to and been taught by one of WA's consumer academics. And it then became evident to me when I had a more basic understanding of disease classification and how it works scientifically and how it's scientifically classified in all areas of medicine. It then became quite clear to me that it's not applied scientifically, and psychiatry is not applied the same way. A lot of the rules are basically just ignored, and that's not for this lecture, we won't go into that. But it's a very good point to make that schizophrenia is a perfect example. On all 5 scientific ratings, it scores 0. It doesn't have any validity as an actual, it's classified in DSM-5 as organic brain disease, yes, so there's just no evidence for that. By Bentor, 1998, if you can get hold of it, it's a great read on schizophrenia. And so social recovery then has become really popular, and it makes heaps more sense, right? I think everyone's into this now, and we got into social recovery because building a sense of community belonging, active citizenship, relationship, bonds and supports is just one of the best ways to go. Social recovery makes sense, but social recovery also has a lot, what do I call them, loopholes, maybe inefficiencies. I presented a critique on social recovery at the World Summit of Positive Psychology, Mindfulness and Psychotherapy in New York last year. And, so hang on, I just want to go, I'm skipping through because I'm conscious of time, but these were actually just pictures of some of those phases that during some of my trauma sort of psychotherapy for a big car crash that I'd had. Amongst that story that I told you, some old wounds to do with the sexual assault came open and things. It's just that I didn't want to spend so long on each bit, and there was weight gain, lost my friends, and all those are pretty common things, so I didn't want to spend too much time on that. And there was the identity crisis and feeling of being institutionalised. This is very simplistic of my social routines, a couple of slides, but it's also potentially disempowering, right? Because I can join all the groups and go to barbecues and parties and all this, and I can physically be there, and I can turn up, and I can put makeup on, and I can go, but is it real? When I'm trying to have active citizenship, and I'm trying to build bonds and relationships in a society, in a community that actively stigmatises me, stereotypes me, and discriminates against me, it's pretty damn hard, and it's not really real. So, I can go and I can do it, but it's not always very authentic, and so social recovery doesn't kind of work in isolation either. This paper by Harper and Speed in 2012 on individualisation is one of my favourite quotes all the time. And the quote says, implicit assumptions inherent in dominant recovery, resilience and discourses render them problematic because they individualise what are social problems, and the structural causes of distress are obscured. So a lot of people like me are distressed. It isn't just us, right? It's all the things that we have to deal with, not being understood, not being accepted, not getting, a job because we've got this massive gap in employment history, and the stigma, the discrimination, this level of social injustice, and these structural things. Like, I had to spend a month phoning, I think, 12 insurance companies to try and get life insurance. So that'd be an easy phone call for you guys, right? You could phone up and go, I want life insurance, I need to take your money, boom. But apparently, because I'm, you know, the way I am, I'm not entitled to that. So I see it as a human right that if I'm sensible enough to want life insurance and I've got a job and I can afford it and I'm offering to pay you for it and I'm told, no, we don't want your money because we don't cover people like you because you're probably it's enormously distressing, and I'm going to try not to cry right now because those days when I was trying to get life insurance to protect my family because I just had a baby in 2017 was enormously distressing. So I'm clearly systemically a second-class citizen. That's how I'm perceived. Like in this country, that's where we're at. And so I did actually take part in an inquiry in Canberra and submit all of this information, and it's just not been resolved yet. But yeah, people with certain diagnoses apparently don't deserve life insurance. So, and it's funny because insurance companies love to take your money, right? Then they're always trying to upsell you, but they don't even want my money. So it's a pretty disgusting feeling when you're on the phone being told we don't cover people like you. Yeah, so we're dealing, I just can't go into it because that's not really for this lecture, but it's not just me that's sick. I don't have this problem. We have a sick society that doesn't accept, it doesn't understand, it stereotypes, it discriminates on all levels, even systemically to federal levels. This is what people like me are actually distressed by as well. So it's not just our disorder. And this is just, I love this quote. Professor Nancy Fraser, we get to read some of her stuff, incredible. It's only when the collective structural experiences of inequality and injustice are explicitly linked to a process of emotional distress that recovery will be possible. I love that, I love her stuff. And so this leaves us with all-important personal recovery, which is what we're all into now, right? Because this is all our services saying, we do personal recovery. Personal recovery is the most important thing, and bang on, personal recovery is the most important thing. It's really hard to define. I think the Anthony 93 definition is seems to be a working definition, but there's no real definition. Look, our services aren't great at delivering personal recovery because we don't know what it is, and we can't define it. There's no national definition of personal recovery, not even peer support, there's not even any national oversight or guidelines for peer support. And yeah, no national working definition for any HSPs on what personal recovery is. That doesn't mean that there should be. I'm not saying that we should define it. I think maybe it's best not to define it because then it expresses that it's something you can't define, and I think that's important. But it does make it problematic for our services to deliver the kind of thing that people want, because we're based on service-centric outcomes, right? And getting activity-based funding coming in now, but they're all service outcomes. They're not my outcome. You know, no one can tell me when I'm recovered. I can tell you when I feel I've recovered. But you can't tell me, oh, you're recovered on this bit now, tick that. It just doesn't work like that. And I think it's weird we've moved into that. And the NDIS has just backstepped a few things. Anyway, I'm digressing again because I'm very passionate, as you can tell. But personal recovery for me, which I guess is what you want to hear from a lived experience speaker, is about meaning making in my own way. My personal understanding of myself, not a biomedical one, not a biological psychiatry disease model, but how do I understand myself? And for me that meant I firstly just needed some basic understanding on what this main model is. And I just needed to look at my experiences and really delve deep into that, going, okay, for me, what does this mean? I don't need anybody else to tell me. I've got to come up with this. I need to understand this myself, and I need to not reach recovery. I need a personal truth. So it's not, you've got schizoaffective disorder, you're in the box, this is treatment, this is medication, and then you'll recover. It's like, no, that's not my personal truth, and it's not meaningful for me. So I'm not going to recover with that approach, And so for me, I just wanted some basic education first, and then I moved, obviously, at university to some more critical understandings and more self-reflection, self-discovery, and all these really warm, fuzzy things. You know, and I wanted a sense of purpose, and I wanted a career. I wanted a career in mental health. A career isn't important to a lot of people, but for me, it was very much part of my personal recovery. I wanted to be a professional person. And so I got to this point, you know, after losing your identity and having to regain it physically, you know, grow your hair back, lose weight, and then find a job, and then find your real values and how to live by them, and all that stuff that you need before you do things like EBT and CBT. Before all that, you need to know who you really are. What do you value? How are you going to live by them? How did you choose your values? I mean, I could walk up to anyone in the car park in a minute and go, you know, do you know your 10 values? What are your top 3 core values? And I'd probably get I'd love family and animals, and you know, you'd get this response where people have to think, what are my top 3 core values? And you know, family and love is something you just found out, you know, I mean, it's personal recovery for me is just self-development. It's just self-exploration, and it's something that actually everybody could benefit from. You don't have to wait till you're sick to do this stuff. You can go through all this, you know, wonderful stuff yourself. And so I think our services should move beyond recovery, where we just maintain people in this stable state. Like, you're not in a hospital, so that's good. Neighbours haven't called the police on you recently for flamethrowers out in the lawn in the middle of the night, and not got voices. So you're recovered, and you stay stable. You know, that's what we offer that as a recovery, and it's not really. It's survival, and it's like, it's okay. But when people are doped up, wandering around, so doped up that, yeah, the voices are gone, but they have no sense of self, and they're so sort of sedated that they can't work, and they've just been told to sit on a disability pension and find a hobby as your best option. And that's not personal recovery, it's not even a life, and nobody deserves that. So what I did, and I postulate now there's a 4th type of recovery, because I think it's what I did, called re-identification, and I'm going to publish a book on this. Oh, I get time. I'm writing a book. I'm very into this. I'm sort of theorising this thing. Is that I just had to re-identify. I need to recover because I now don't believe I was ever sick. I was very challenged and completely distressed. I don't believe I've got brain disease. I don't believe that I'm any different to anyone in this room. I had a different experience and I behaved differently because that's who I am as a human being. I'm just Phoebe. It's not like I'm schizoaffective. It's just I'm Phoebe, and I had the life and the experiences and the trauma that I had, and my mind and emotions did all these crazy, scary things along the way to try and cope, and I listened to it, made my own sense of it, moved away from all so-called experts in me, made my own way, re-identified, reinvented, and now I'm fine. And it's just that simple for me, and I find that more elegant than all this disease kind of thing. So I reinvented, and I redreamed. I created dreaming space. I wrote personal recovery for me is about writing a mission statement and a vision statement for my life. And then I went out and proactively chose mentors, actual people in the sector with or without lived experience that I kind of idolized, that I thought, yeah, they're living by their values, I respect that and I value that, I want to emulate that, and I'm actively engaged with them still now. Even Luna Boob at Curtin University, I co-tutor with her now. Alan, another professional mentor, I'm now his deputy at the Community Advisory Council, Peabody, and I learn from all the time. And then I chose idols, you know, people you don't actually meet or know, but just people that, you know, and, you know, I did all those kinds of things, and I had to do it on my own because we don't offer that in services. I mean, we don't, you know, you see all these care plans, these lovely black and white Word documents or PDFs, and they're just kind of quite generic, you know, and for a very start, that's not personal recovery, because I should be writing my care plan. You know, it's, yeah, I'll digress again, but I generally prefer the term discovery to recovery, and recovery is becoming more unpopular now in the movement because people who don't believe they're sick, obviously, if I'm not sick I didn't recover, I just self-developed, you know. So I became this person, I do all this speaking, I do all these jobs, and I love life, and I probably love life more than anyone else I know, so, which is awesome, because I'm in love with my life, and if I got hit by a bus and died tomorrow, I wouldn't have any, I'm so proud of everything I've achieved, and I'll just be like, yeah, I did a great job. So it's just as possible that life after recovery is even better than before, that people can be, you know, a new version of me, version 2.0. You know, it's, you know, and this term recovery, I kind of have a problem with it because we use this phrase in services, we've got to try and get her back to her level of pre-morbid functioning. And I'm like, one, that's a really awful phrase, it just sounds pre-morbid functioning. It's like comorbidity. You know, it's not a strength-based empowering term. Like co-challenge, co-distress, whatever, it just yeah. Anyway, so most of us, when we've been through this massive personal distress and then recovery and achievement, we don't go back to who we were before. How could we? With everything we've learned and done, it's more likely we'd be better, or at least as good as, but we won't be the same. So it's, you know, it's kind of like rehab. Rehabilitation has been rebadged as recovery. It's not really rehabilitation. You know, it's when you break your leg, get it in plaster, and you expect for your leg to work exactly as it did before. It doesn't work like that in mental health. It's more of a fluid thing. So there's a 6-minute video of me on my YouTube channel having a discussion about my real dislike of the word relapse, and that's, again, I'm not for today because I think I'm already going to run it over. But yeah, and so yeah, so my framework of understanding is in some senses unique to me, and in some cases not. And I think everyone gets a recipe and makes up their own menu and chooses different things in different phases of life and different courses and things, you know. And so, now, I love this question. What do I see myself as recovering from? Well, firstly, this is all my first point, is that the now, for me, the diagnosis is an irrelevant thing. It helped me a little bit at the time because I could Google it and go, oh, other people have got this, I'm not that weird, and there are treatments. You know, it was helpful for a time, but that's pretty superficial level understanding, and and so, you know, long term, I've moved away from those kind of boxes and social labels, you know, and just think, you know, when you tell someone, I've got borderline personality disorder, I've got narcissistic personality disorder, there's nothing more harmful than saying to someone, your personality is disordered, because your personality is your human, is you as a human being. So when you diagnose someone, you say to them, this is because you've got a personality disorder. I'm normal, and you're not like me, your personality is disordered, and you're wrong as a human being. And they're not, they're just them, they're just not like you. It's just a societal, it's all, some people go as far in the consumer movement, the activists speak, you know, with this idea that actually a lot of these diagnoses are a form of social control. Like you just box people up, and we've got this really harmful binary concept of illness and wellness. You know, on one side you're ill, you're sort of sick, there, and on the other side is well people. There's nothing in between, it's that or that, and it's a binary, and it's really harmful, because it's so superficial, you know, and there are people that fit both sides, like me, and then people get really confused when you move around in the liminal space. So like, I'm a mental health professional, and then sometimes I take sick leave from work because I'm just, you know, a couple of days because I'm not well, and then I come back. So who am I? Am I well? So I've got a career and a job and a husband and a kid, but I'm off sick, but I'm also a mental health professional. Society, we just love to box people, and that's not a flaw, it's not a criticism of any of you or anyone I know. It's a human thing. We feel better when we can put people in boxes and compartmentalise and label, because it helps us feel in control and it helps us identify. And I think over evolution, we've had to make judgments and things very, very quickly. Because I love it when people go, I'm a totally non-judgmental person. It's not possible. Because when you're a human, you naturally judge deep inside. You do. But you verbalise that. But we have respect, and we have social norms, and we don't discriminate. And when we meet someone and we don't like the way we dress, and we think, oh my God, it's like a real bogan. You know, say it. But you have actually made, you know, and that served us that's helped us survive over years, because when, we're wandering out of cave and there's a line out front, we make a judgment that's pretty bloody scary, we think I shouldn't go out there, right? So we make judgments all the time. So, anyway, I've digressed again, but for me, this boxing and these binaries, not helpful. And I found myself getting a lot better when I moved as far away from that as possible. And so firstly, I'm recovering from this model we're in. And I'm also recovering from the diagnosis, the label, social label, which I will never be rid of now, and that box I was put in. And I'm also recovering from this, as I say, one-size-fits-all approach. I'm recovering from everybody's clinical understandings of who I am as a person, and I've had to recover from side effects of medications. I'm also recovering from society's understandings of who I am as an individual, society's low expectations of me, both personally and professionally. I'm recovering from stigma, prejudice, living at the poverty line, I was there for a long time, financial distress, structural oppression, which I've mentioned, and social injustice, which I've mentioned. And above all, I found myself having to recover from this total and utter loss of hope at the start of my journey. And so, and that's what a lot of us are recovering from, and it's really challenging in the system we have in Western world. There are other countries, by the way, that do things completely so different from what we do, and the results are much better, but that's a different lecture again. And so I quote actually one of my clients, because he said something really interesting. He said, being bipolar is not my problem. I go up, I go down, I accept that. I'm used to it. I can try and enjoy the highs when I can, and I've learned to take the rough with the smooth. What makes life truly awful for me is how the world treats me. So I often quote that, it's a quite powerful words. And so just as mental health professionals need to be mindful that it's often your client's low socioeconomic status and all the social determinants of health that contribute to our sickness. Because often our mental health challenges have disrupted our education. We were bright enough to go to uni, but we couldn't because we had this life that we just way too challenged, way too distressed. We never got a degree. We never, not because we weren't capable, it's just that life just didn't permit. And so then we don't get as good a job, and we can get trapped in this low socioeconomic band, and further marginalising us. And there you go. There's more distress there. I'm going to, or I should probably try and finish up. So I'm going to finish up with the last two. Is what am I recovering towards? So I love all these things, and some of these are pretty standard, some are quite mean. I'm moving towards an idea, a concept, and a personal truth, and a state of well-being. Not this state where I'm stable and at hospital and I've got a job. Not those things. I'm always working towards my personal truth, and so that's the difference, I guess. And so, what does my recovery look like to me? These are all things that are really important to me. Those top three are my top three core values, because passion, I think, can lead you anywhere you want and give you any education and make anything happen. If you want something enough and you're passionate, lots of things happen. And then when you're passionate, I'm very passionate about education and knowledge, and so knowledge is a really important one for me. I don't just mean academic, I mean all sorts of knowledge. And I think that, they say knowledge is power, so I think with a lot of knowledge comes a degree of freedom, and freedom is really important to me. And dedication to my career. I'm a professional person, and these are the things that I work to. And these are me. I love mani-pedis and all laminails, so shocking today, but I'm into all this stuff as well. Gratitude journaling is a big one for me too. And I think I will probably wrap up with some questions, because I think finding beauty in my world. And I might end it there because this is a really nice slide. Living with passion and living with purpose. It's not something you can discover for somebody else. but you can totally facilitate the journey and support it and enable someone to self-empower. I don't really believe in the word empowerment, by the way. I always get really funny when I hear clinicians go, I've empowered someone. I'm like, it doesn't work like that. You can't empower somebody else. Power is something you take. You stand up and you take, the only real form of empowerment is self-empowerment, right? It's when you stand up and go, this is what I want to do, this is why I'm a voluntary patient, this is in my rights, and I'm going to use you and all your clinical knowledge and all of your degree and everything that you know to help me do what I want to do, whether you agree or not, whether it's risky. I want to do what I want to do in the safest way, in a supportive and collaborative way. That's what you should aim for, self-empowerment. Not what we do now, where we throw a biomedical model down someone's face, suggest this, and not to mention locking people up, which is illegal under international law that we sign. We give them these options that we've come up with, and they can choose from these three. This is what you get. I'm choosing it. This is, you can have CBT and you can do it. And then you go, I gave them choices and they chose something and I empowered them, and it just makes me like, no, it's not. That's not what we do. But yeah, and I'm going to leave you with one actual very nice slide. This was actually for also qualified clinicians. This is another lecture in itself, but I'll leave that there because these are quite important to consumers, and you could talk for a long time on all of those. But I might just leave that as a pointer because you're all qualified clinicians, and it's probably nice for you to hear from someone that knows these sorts of things, because I work in service as well. That these are just what I've picked out as really important things. And so that was it. Now I've, as I mentioned, run my own company and training and stuff. That's the free rabbit hole there. If you're interested in reading about me, you can. And there's a YouTube channel called Rabbit Hole. But if any of you wanted me to ever come and do any training in the workplaces, you must book me through Comwa, because that's who I'm representing today. So I'm actually representing Comwa. So you're welcome to read and do anything you want, but if any of you wanted a booking, please go through Comwa. And I'm going to stop because I've only got 5 minutes for questions. But thank you for listening. Wow, I was going to say so much. I'm such a talker. I wish I could be here for 2 hours. I hope that you got, I was trying to pick the best bits, and I hope that you got enough out of it. Does anyone want to ask me? You can ask me anything. I'm pretty much an open book. I'll give you an honest answer. You're probably all a bit stunned, yeah. I'm sick of my own voice. I would like somebody else to talk. But if you think of anything later, because this is what happens to me, it's like, you know, when you go for a job interview and you go, I should have said this. You can just email me or email admin at Conwa, and I can give you I can answer anything that you may think of later today or in the week. Just email a question and I'll answer. Cool. Thank you again. Yeah, you can.
Is there any room in you as you for any biomedical help?
Is there any what? Sorry, any?
Is there any help, chance, or anything good that is biomedically that can help somebody who is?
There's plenty, yeah. I don't want to come across as someone who bashes biological psychiatry and the disease model and we should totally ban it and never ever medicate and not have psychiatry. That's not it. There's plenty in clinical recovery that does work. So for example, for myself, I've used a purely medication approach for certain phases of things. So when I was postpartum, I was couldn't even sleep. I said, give me everything. I had no choice, but I was on 7 meds, I was on bed, there wasn't anything I wasn't on, and I took it because, to be honest, I just wanted to be numb. And that was really helpful at that point, to be medicated to help me just have a basic functioning. So that's a good example. Some people do actually at some point just need sleepers. They just need a PRN to get through, but we should never just leave people like that. So I think other clinical things that help. Massive fan of what psychologists do in that real psychotherapy, the real talking therapies. Psychotherapy is just, I would just say, critical for so many of us, because most of us do have a trauma background. And I think there are, I myself have I'm generally kind of anti-psychiatrist, but I have a psychiatrist. I love going to talk to her. She's a lovely Indian, I'm not very good with it. And we just, Yeah, look, I think the most important thing, if we're doing a lot of clinical things, even though we're doing clinical things, the relationship is so important. So if you're clinicians, I'd say probably the most helpful thing is to say, I work in a medical model, this is our Western, this is Australia, and this is your diagnosis, so I have to work in this. But I'm totally open to you having a completely different understanding. I respect it and I support it, and I'll facilitate even more of your own growing and understanding, even though there are things I have to do. I've got to do risk assessments, I've got to write this care plan, I've got to do the crisis plan. If you can accept what I've got to do, and I'll be really supportive of your things, and I'll also, and this is really crucial, even though you're in this model as well, you can still change your language. So you can still use their language. So I say probably the best relationship building thing in your first contact with someone is to say, do I call you a patient or a service user or a consumer or a vessel of experience or a PLE, or, for a start, when I'm referring to you in a meeting at which you are not present, which is the other disempowering thing to do, how do I refer to you just as a person? Joe Blogs, am I allowed to say patient? You do that first. But then really work on the language. So if they say, I really don't like the word psychosis because I don't understand, I'm not sure I totally agree, could we just call it psychological distress, because that's how I understand it, and just use their language. I mean, you've done these degrees and you've learned all this lovely fancy language, but it's becoming very unpopular, and I know what you mean because I work in it, but some people don't know what you mean, and some people do know what you mean, and that's why they don't like it. So I think clinically, your best thing is relationship building, and the best thing for relationship building is language, because language is a massive carrier of meaning and intent and history and oppression. And the consumer movement was born from the same civil rights movements that gay rights, women's rights. It's come from the same things. There's a very rich texture of history there. People. Psychiatry has just done awfully traumatic things to people and is responsible for a lot of trauma. I mean, we've tried to freeze things out of it. We've had conversion therapy, for homosexual people, and so think what's already changed now. So I'm hoping that in 100, and it probably will take 100 years, to be honest, the health system I'm envisioning, I will never see, and I don't think my son will ever see. But I'm hoping that in 100 years we look at some of the terminology we've got in our DSM now. Hopefully we don't have a DSM in the future, and we just deal with people individually. We'll look at the term schizophrenia and go, oh God, do you remember when we told people they had psychosis? Oh no, do you remember when we told people that they had a brain and that they, So I'm just hoping that we get to that point where we just accept all humans as the way they are, for whatever reason, and that mental sickness is kind of out the window, and that everyone's just into development, everyone's into support, and we have a different society and all these things. I could talk for another hour on that, but that's what I would like, yeah.
Okay, Tim. Just in regards to your view on empowerment, for me, I've always seen empowerment, helping people take control of their lives and stuff like that. So for me, I would seek to empower.
I'm giving you this power to make a decision. I have bestowed upon you. There you go. Do you feel empowered now? It's that actual transaction is disempowering. If you have to ask for power and you do or don't get given power, you're not empowered. So you have to it's like, that's why my company's called Through the Rabbit Hole, because I'm constantly flipping like, this is really confused, I always use that example in a sarcastic voice just because it really hones the point. I wasn't meaning to patronise anything. It's just that it's kind of what we do not as people, it's our service, that's how our service works. It would be lovely when you come into services and your very first assessment is, okay, now how do you understand yourself so far? And I'll try and figure a model that will fit you, but it's not that psychiatry is horrible, even people that don't want to do it. They don't care. Our system is not set up because we just systemically we can't offer what we should be offering. because it's just not established that way. So we need to look at other countries. Consumers they just need to be met where they're at. And as long as you're obviously going into mental health work because you're people, you love people, and you want to help, and you're compassionate, and you're empathetic, and you want to do this job. Best job in the world. Any mental health is just, to me, it's just the best job in the world. I love these people. So as long as you're always saying to your consumer, am I doing okay? Did I say that? Or did I not use, is this language okay? It's just that. Thank you so much, Sheila, for having me again. Different lectures to last time. Didn't go completely as I planned because I switched, but this is, I do a lot of stuff just on the hop in my head. So this was my first time kind of mixing and matching lectures, so it didn't go too badly, I think. So thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you. That's excellent. Thank you very much.